book lovers, Kaylee here, and welcome back to the Enchanted Library, and today's video is a follow-up from my series introduction for the catch-up. Alright, so like I said in that video, I do have a lot of series that I am trying my darndest to catch up on, and the list is a long one. And honestly, the list is not complete because there is still a lot that are ongoing that I need to catch up on that I don't think I have written down or that I don't realize. So I know that in the back of my mind there are more series that I'm in the middle of, but for some reason I cannot think of them right now. But most of them I do have written out, so that way I can share with you guys what books I'm trying to catch up on, and also maybe you can give me some opinions on which ones I should prioritize. Without further ado, let's talk about the series. Series number 1 is going to be the Invisible Library series by Genevieve Gogman, and I do believe that it is an ongoing series still. There are 7 books in it right now, and I have only read book 1, so I have a fair bit to catch up on. And this series follows Irene. She is a librarian, and that is essentially like a spy and someone who is good in combat and is very smart and is basically protecting this ultimate library and going into these different, I would say, worlds throughout it, as well as having a sidekick who has his own secret, and they just go on these epic adventures, I feel like. And the first book was full of a lot of information and a lot of potential, so I'm excited to keep going on. The next series is the Lunar Chronicles, and that's by Marissa Meyer, and that is a completed series. When I say complete, I mean that all of the books in the series are out. So this series is actually one of my friend's all-time favorite series, and if not for her, I don't think I would be continuing it. I have read Cinder, and I have read Scarlet, and then there's Cress and Winter and Stars Above, which is the sort of like a series of novellas about the characters. So I'm not really a huge fan of YA anymore. You will notice that there are some YA series on here that I do want to finish, but for the most part, this really isn't the type of series that's necessarily up my alley. It's like a reimagining of fairy tales and making it more like fantastical and almost sci-fi in a way. Well, actually very sci-fi. So the next series is another YA, and that is the Caravelle Trilogy by Stephanie Garber, and that is complete. I have read book 1, but I have owned book 2 for years and years, and I really just need to sit down and read them. It's only 3 books. I only have 2 books left, so it shouldn't be difficult to do. I feel like everyone knows what this series is about though, but essentially it covers this magical caravel, and there's a lot of underlying secrets with it, and it's kind of messed up in a way, but I am curious to learn more about legend and figure out what's going on there. Up next we have the Ash Princess Trilogy, and that's by Laura Sebastian, and that is a complete trilogy, so that is all out now. I read the first book, Ash Princess, a few years ago, like the year it came out, and I was super on board with it, but then I didn't end up picking up the second book when it came out, which you will notice is a thing that happens a lot with me. I end up reading the first book and thinking that it's really great, I want to know what happens next, but then the issue that I have is in the back of my head there's a YA trope that happens a lot with series, and that is you end up really liking these characters and then they get split apart, someone's potentially dead, and happy endings might not happen, and that makes me sad and not want to continue. But that is my own feelings about it. It doesn't always happen that way, and it rarely ends up happening that way, that it just rips out your heart. There is usually a happy ending, so I don't know. I guess I'm just worried about that in-between time when you don't really know. But with all the books being out, I should just be able to power through and get over that second book issue and just move on to the last one quickly. Next up we have the Waking Land series by Callie Bates, and this one is also complete. I had read book 1, again, a very long time ago, and I did pick up book 2, so I've held on to that one for a few years as well. But with this series, again, I have that same issue of you end up falling in love with these characters being together and always being around each other, and then they get split up. Or it changes POVs and you don't get to see the POV of the person that you really liked anymore, as much I should say. So there are these mental blocks that I have in my head when it comes to series that I really need to just get over. Because I do want to know what happens with this book. There's a lot of rebellion in this book. There's a lot of magic. There's a lot of secrets. I really want to figure out what's happening with this series and just need to finish it. Then we have the Remnant Chronicles, and that's by Mary E. Pearson, and that's a trilogy that is done. It is complete, and I only read The Kiss of Deception. I know full well why I haven't really completed this series yet, and that is because The Kiss of Deception I didn't really like. I felt like nothing happened. There was not a lot of plot progression. We were really just stuck with this girl's day-to-day life and her trying to decide which guy she should like. And I got real sick of that real quick. But the reason it's on this list that I want to complete it is because the last 2 chapters in this book were the best part of it all. So I'm hoping that that goes into the next book in the series, and that it continues just doing an upward trend of getting better and better. But because of the first 90% of that book, I definitely am not super keen to start the next one, just because I feel like there's other books and series that are higher in my list than that. But because of those last 2 chapters, I'm willing to finish the series. So we'll see how that goes. And also on here I have duologies, which should be so easy to finish. But the next duology, I guess, the first duology that I'll talk about is the Rhyme Chronicles. That's by Mindy Arnett, and that is a completed duology as well. So the first book was Onyx and Ivory, and then the second book is Shadow and Flame. But Onyx and Ivory I actually really did like. But again, I have that issue where you end up really liking these characters and then book 2 is going to separate them and possibly kill one, and it's just, like I said, I just want a happy ending. So I've been putting off reading Shadow and Flame, but I should just do it, and I can probably just do it this year, and then that will be complete. And around the same time that the Rhyme Chronicles started and Onyx and Ivory came out, The Traitor's Game by Jennifer A. Nielsen came out, and I believe it's still ongoing, but there's 3 books out in it right now. I read book 1, which was The Traitor's Game, and again really fell in love with it. Had a lot of fun with the characters. Worried about book 2 though, so I've been putting it off. Have you noticed a trend? So we shall see. Now that book 3 is out, hopefully I can get over that second book slump and just power through it. Alright, now this one I'm going to probably get a lot of hate for. Actually, there's a couple on here that I'm going to get a lot of hate for. And that is the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. Obviously it's complete, it's a duology. I read Six of Crows, and obviously Crooked Kingdoms is the sequel to that. I have not read it because I'll be completely honest, I did not really like Six of Crows. I'm in the minority there. But I have it on this list because I feel like it's such a beloved duology that I should at least give it its due, and there's only 1 book that I have to read, so there you go. Next up, I don't think if it's really considered a series or a duology, or if it's more of like an anthology, but that's The Sky in the Deep anthology by Adrienne Young. This one I believe is complete. I don't think she's writing anything more in this world. But I absolutely love Sky in the Deep. I thought that it was amazing when I read it, and I definitely read it at least 2 more times that same month that I read it when it came out. Loved it. And then a couple of years ago she came out with The Girl the Sea Gave Back, and I've put off reading that one because it doesn't cover the same characters, even though the characters from book 1 are sort of side characters in this one, so we'll see. I definitely do want to read it though, because I think Adrienne Young is such a fun writer, and I love how she took inspiration from Vikings for that series, so definitely need to get on that one. Now, this next series. It's a lot, you guys. It's the Tudor novels by Philippa Gregory. These ones are complete, but there's like 15 books in the series, and I've only read book 1. And book 1 took me a very long time to read because I felt like it was very dense and there was a lot of information being given, not a lot of plot progression. So it was a dense read for me. And I like to be able to read books relatively quickly. I kind of pride myself on that to an extent. So we'll see how long it takes me to get through these 14 other books. But I definitely do want to read them because I really enjoyed book one, regardless of it being a bit dense and kind of slow. But I would love to read more about her, like Philippa Gregory's version of this world, and just need to get on with it. Next up, we have the Tiger at Midnight Trilogy by Swati Tirthala, and that is complete. The last book came out last year, and I need to get going with this series again. I read The Tiger at Midnight and absolutely adored it. I had an arc of it, and I just thought that it was such a fun adventure, and I just need to finish this one because it was so good. But again, I'm worried about that whole situation where there's misunderstandings and the two main characters get pulled apart and issues come up, and I just want them to be happy and together. So hopefully, because the third book is out, like I said, I'll be able to get through the drama of book two and just slide into book three. Next one is another one that I'm very excited because I only have one book left of it to finish it, and that is The Shadow of the Fox Trilogy by Julie Kagawa. I rave about this series. I think it is so good, and I've been putting it off just because I want it to last. I do have the last book, Night of the Dragon, and it's so short. I got it and I realized how short it was, and now I'm so sad. Because I was expecting another bigger book, and it's like a third of the size of book one. So I feel like it's going to be wrapped up too quickly. So I'm really worried about that. But I just found that this series has been so amazingly well done. It's all about like this kitsune fox shapeshifter girl and this potential of having this kami dragon come out, and it's just, I had so much fun reading book one and book two, and it just feels, I say this all the time when I talk about this series, but it feels like an anime is playing in my head, and I can't get enough of it. Next up, we have another ongoing series, which I thought was a YA when I got the first book that I read of it, but it's actually an adult historical mystery series, and it is the Daughter of Sherlock Holmes Mysteries by Leonard Goldberg, and that is an ongoing series as far as I'm aware. Now, for Christmas a few years ago now, I ended up getting one of the books from it, and that's A Study in Treason. That was actually book two. So I have been trying to get my hands on book one, and three and four I think are out now, but because I have book two in hardcover, I want book one in hardcover, and it's very hard to find. So if you know where I can get a copy of it, it's called The Daughter of Sherlock Holmes. If you know where I can get a copy of it in hardcover, please let me know because I'd really appreciate it. Alright, now we have one of the first really big, beefy fantasy series that is on this list, and I really enjoyed the first book in this series, but that's The Faithful and the Fallen series by John Gwynne. It is complete. There are 4 books in it, Malice, Valor, Ruin, and Wrath, and I have only read Malice. I actually read it for Tome Topple a number of years ago, and I really enjoyed it. I love how there is no plot armor for anybody and how it just destroys you, but there is so much happening in this world, there's so much political stuff going on in this world that it doesn't matter what character you follow, you just want to know what's happening. So I'm very excited to continue on with it. I hope that I don't have to reread book 1 because I do know someone who started reading Valor after having waited a couple of years since reading Malice, and they ended up DNFing it because they need to reread Malice. So hopefully that doesn't happen to me. Next up we have another YA sci-fi, I guess, series is what I'll call it, and that is the System Divine series. That's by Jessica Brody and Joanne Rendell. Yes. And this so far has 3 books in it. However, the 3rd book comes out this year. Book 1 was Sky Without Stars. And basically what drew me to this series is the fact that it is a sort of retelling of Les Mis. And there were a lot of nods to Les Mis in it, and I absolutely love that. So I do, as much as I'm not a sci-fi reader, I am still into this series because I want to see how much more they can switch up Les Mis. And I'm really worried that my favorite character from Les Mis, who is actually also my favorite character in this series, is going to meet the same fate. And I'm very worried about that. Hope it doesn't happen, but that is also one of the reasons that I've been putting it off, is because I don't want my heart broken. The next one is also going to be one that I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for because it has a lot of people who love it, and one of my friends is one of those people. But that's Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. Now, I have issues with Strange the Dreamer. I have many issues with it. It's kind of in that same boat as Kiss of Deception, where not much happens, there's not a lot of plot, there's a lot of presumed plot, a lot of things that happen off page, and you don't really get a good feel of the characters. I have a lot of issues, but the last chapter of Strange the Dreamer captured my attention, finally, and I'm interested to see how that plays out in Muse of Nightmares. But again, I've been putting it off because I did not enjoy Strange the Dreamer, so I have other books and series that are on my list that are higher up in my TBR than this. But I do want to finish it because, like I said, it's one of my friend's favorite series, favorite duologies. Strange the Dreamer is one of her favorite books, and I feel like I need to give it full appreciation and read the second book. Next, we have Robin Hood, Demonsbane by Debbie Vigue and James R. Tuck. Yeah, and that is a complete trilogy. So book number 1 was The Mark of the Black Arrow, and I really enjoyed it. I had picked it up a couple of years ago and was putting off reading it because I love Robin Hood, and anything that has a retelling has me worried and hesitant because I don't really like people messing with originals of things because I appreciate the original more usually. But I had a lot of fun with the first book, and it covers more POVs than just Robin Hood's, and actually Robin Hood is probably the least covered in that series, so I am excited to see this world more because it is like a fantastical reimagining. You've got a lot of like druids, you've got the sheriff, there's so much that goes on with the first book, and I'm excited to continue on. I do have book 2, which I hauled in my first haul of the year, which you can watch somewhere up here, and it is The Two Torques. I would love to get back into this world. Like I said, I read book 1 last year, and that was in the summertime, so hopefully I can finish up book 2 and 3 this year and finish that trilogy. And let's get into some more fun stuff, shall we? I also have Girl Meets Duke by Tessa Dare. Now, you're going to notice a couple of historical romance series on here because 2020 was the year that I really discovered my appreciation for historical romance, and I know that Girl Meets Duke is, I believe, an ongoing series right now, and I have read book 1 and book 2. I have book 3 ready to go, and these books I just blast through. It's your stereotypical historical romance. Each book covers a girl who has a very specific trait. Like they're either a seamstress, or they deal with clocks, or like they have their own thing that they like to do, or their own career. Alright, my card filled up. I don't know where that cut me off, but Girl Meets Duke, I just need to catch up with this series, and then I'll be able to follow up each time a new one comes out. And so that is the first of the historical romances on this list. This next one is another YA, and honestly I wouldn't complete this series, but there's only one book left, and it is actually the first book because I ended up getting My Plain Jane. It was actually the Lady Janie series by Cynthia Hand, Jessica Brody, and Jodie Ashton, I believe, and it's the first 3 books in their like author trio reimaginings of things. I got My Plain Jane in an Owl Crate box and really enjoyed it. And then I ended up picking up My Calamity Jane last year, didn't really like it, but I still need to read the first book, which is My Lady Jane. So I figured since I only have that one left, and it is the one that started it all, I might as well read it. Next up we have a YA sci-fi, and that is Light Years by Cass Morgan. I believe this one is still ongoing, but I read book 1, Light Years, a couple years ago, and then book 2 is out right now, and I believe it's gonna keep going as far as I'm aware, but I really liked Cass Morgan's series, The 100. I read that when it came out, and I just devoured those so quickly. I also really did enjoy the show, but I feel like the show really broke my heart at like the last season because it just ruined everything, but the books always have pride of place in my heart. So I wanted to pick up her other series, which is Light Years, and even though it's sci-fi again, I still really enjoyed it. So I want to see what happens with these cadets and figure out how they get over the potential killing of their space station and see how that goes. We have the introduction of contemporary romance coming into here, and that is the Kiss Quotient series by Helen Huang. And I read book 1, Kiss Quotient, a while ago and absolutely loved it. I have reread it since, and it's still amazing. And she has a couple of other books that have come out in that same world and with those same characters. So I do want to see what happens with all of the others, and I want to know more about the other characters' personal struggles and their stories and see how that all plays out. We have another YA fantasy series. Whew, guys, there's a lot of YA on here. Thankfully they're quick reads though. And that is the Smoke Thieves series by Sally Green. Now, this one was sort of tagged to be like a YA version of Game of Thrones, and I would agree with that. It was so much fun. Like, book 1 was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. I loved all of the characters. I couldn't wait to read from each of their POVs. There is like, the cover is so true to what is going on with this book, and it's like chess pieces moving. So great. And I do need to keep going with this series because I want to see what happens with everyone. There's a lot going on, and I feel like not enough people talk about this book and this series as a whole, so I'm excited to keep going with it and hopefully be able to continue to sing its praises. Next up we have another contemporary sort of coming of age, finding yourself kind of series, and that is by Jenny Colgan, and that's the Scottish Bookshop series. And this one I believe is ongoing, and I only read the first book in it late last year, and that was The Bookshop on the Corner. And I had a lot of fun with it. It wasn't my all-time favorite read, but I really liked how self-aware it was, like when talking about how libraries are sort of having to be reimagined and how you need to sort of take the reins of your life and all of that. I really appreciated that part of the story and want to continue on because even though it seems like book 1 is about one person, book 2 has its own main characters within that same world, and so on and so forth, I do want to see how each of these different main characters deal with their own needing of a change and needing to grow within themselves, and being surrounded by books while they do it just sounds amazing, and I do want to continue on with it. The Newsflesh Trilogy by Myra Grant. This one, I don't read zombie books. I really don't. But I had picked up Feed many years ago, and it had sat on my shelf for a very long time, and I only just read it last year. So I really did enjoy it though. It had a twist that actually shocked me, and I should have seen it coming, but I was blissfully unaware and thought that it was amazing, and I'm excited to see what goes on in the next book because everything got turned on its head. I really recommend it if you haven't read it yet. The zombie aspect is very much a side thing. The first book was unexpectedly more so about a presidential election, which was kind of ironic because 2020 was a crazy presidential election in America, and yeah, I just felt like it suited the time very well with, you know, diseases and stuff. So I do, like I said, want to finish this off because I think that Myra Grant did a really good job. I have my brain sort of triggered to not have it be what I expect it to be, if that makes sense, because I definitely went into Feed with very specific expectations and thoughts, and it took me a little bit to readjust my expectations because I didn't fully know what it was about, and the fact that the political stuff really took pride of place with it. But gosh, that ending. I need to finish this trilogy. Now we have another huge series that has 19 books in it right now and still counting, and that is the Virgin River series by Robin Carr, and this one I would never have picked up if not for Netflix being like, hey, this is a series that you might be interested in. So I ended up reading book 1, I've read book 2, and I have book 3 on standby. So with 19 books in this series though, it's going to take me a long time to get through. I do want to have this one as part of my Netflix Made Me Read It series, and I'm excited to get through it, but that's going to be a ways down the line, unless I just talk about book one. So let me know, do you want me to just talk about book one and season one of Virgin River? Because I have read those and I have watched it. So if you want me to do a Netflix Made Me Read It on that, or if you want me to do it on the whole series, let me know. Alright, so another one is going to be the first historical fiction, and potentially the only historical fiction on here that I need to finish, and that is a newly found author for me that I just found at the very end of last year, and that is Jennifer Robson and her Great War series. And it's a trilogy actually, and I read book one somewhere in France, like I said, late last year, and absolutely loved it. Lily and Robbie are everything in my opinion, and I was so worried about this first book because I thought that it would not live up to the hype. Oh boy, did it ever. So I definitely want to continue on with the other two books in the series, and it follows like right after, I believe, the series of events of the first book, and it covers each of the other two has a different main character that we're covering the story of, but we still get nods to the original characters. So it's gonna be so great. I feel like Jennifer Robson did such an amazing job, and I can't wait to read more of her stuff, and I'll be very sad when this trilogy is done, I feel. So I want to make it last. Next up is also a newly found author that I have been really liking, or actually series I should say, because I haven't read anything else by him. But that is the Newbery and Hobbs investigation series, and that is by George Mann. And this one is a sci-fi series, which I know I said before I'm not super into sci-fi and I'm not super into zombies, but this one has a steampunk twist, which for me is everything. I love steampunk. And this is like in an alternate universe, Victorian England kind of a place, and there are these things called revenants roaming around, and they're basically like how we would understand zombies. So much, like, it's way better written than what I would expect a zombie to be written as. Like, I'm actually creeped out by these things when they're described. They're not like super imperative to the plot though. There's so much that's going on elsewhere, but you basically always in the back of your mind are like, don't go out after dark and don't go into the mist because revenants are there. So it's very interesting to watch these two characters, so Newbery and Hobbs, doing these investigations. I have read the first 3 books in the series. There's 3 more books. The last book comes out in August, I believe. So I have been devouring these books. Next one is another YA fantasy series that is much loved, that I have been just not super needing to read the next book. But that's an Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I can definitely understand why this is so beloved, and I enjoyed the first book. I wasn't as enthralled as it seems like everyone else is, so I was never too eager to read the next one. It wasn't like one of those books that I needed to get the moment it came out, and because of that, it is now like 4 or 5 years after the first book has come out, and I still haven't read book 2, because other things have just been more top of my TBR than this. But I do want to finish them because it is such a well-beloved series, and I feel like it's one of those series that just gets better as it progresses, hopefully, from what I've heard. So like I said, I enjoyed book 1. I think I only gave it like a 3-star because I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like mind-blowing. But I do still want to finish it. Alright, next up we have some more historical romance, and that is the Victorian Rebels series by Kerrigan Byrne. Now, this series has 8 books in it, and I believe it's still ongoing. I read The Highwayman, when did I read it? Within like the last couple of months, and I didn't absolutely love it. I have some issues with it, but it was still an enjoyable read, and I would like to see more from this series and to see what Kerrigan Byrne does with it all. So I do want to continue on with it. Obviously it's on this list, but we shall see if it gets better as it progresses or not, because I feel like the first book in this type of a series is definitely a hit or miss, and I'm not super into like the alpha male, you're mine, no one can have you kind of a protagonist, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe Kerrigan Byrne can make me appreciate it more than I do. But book 1 was okay. and I want to see what else she can do. In that same vein, we have The Wallflowers by Lisa Kleypas, and that is a complete series. There are 4 in it, and I've only read book 1, but I do have book 2 on standby right now, and I kind of like the premise of it in the fact that you have 4 girls and they're all wallflowers, and in book 1 they end up coming together and wanting to help each other find a man, basically, and I feel like that's adorable. So I want to see more of their interactions and figure out what else they can do. So I definitely do want to continue on with the series. Book 1 was okay. It was fun, but again, I really like the interaction between the friends and seeing how they sort of interfere with each other's lives. So I want to see that continue. And then we have another Tessa Dare series, and that is the Spindle Cove series. I ended up reading book 3 of this one, and I don't know what happened that made me pick up book 3 and not book 1, but I really enjoyed it. I feel like Spindle Cove is so fun. So I want to figure out or read more about these ladies and figure out how their romances evolve. So I definitely need to backtrack and read book 1 and 2, and then I want to continue, which there's only like 5 books of. And I think that Spindle Cove ties into the next series that I have on here, which is the Castles Ever After series by Tessa Dare. For some reason, when I was going through and making the list of books that I need to catch up on, the same title and the same book showed up in both. So if you're a historical romance reader and a Tessa Dare reader in particular, do you know if that's true? Because I didn't realize that those two would overlap. But the Castles Ever After series is another one that I do want to continue. The first book was interesting. There were some aspects of it that I was kind of iffy about and seemed really campy, but I don't know, I'm intrigued to see what happens with the other castles. 4 more left, guys. So the next one is Outlander by Diana Gabaldon, and I love Outlander. They are daunting books though. That is my main issue, is because they're over like 1,000 pages. There's 9, and I believe it's still ongoing. So it's a lot. That's a lot of pages. And I have Voyager on standby right now, which incidentally I thought I had read already, but apparently I only read like half of it, and then I ended up watching the show, and then I forgot that I didn't finish the book, and yeah, so I need to restart that because I'm probably going to be confused between showisms and what the book actually is. So I need to finish this series real bad, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon because it is so long and so ongoing, and there are so many other books. But it's one of those ones that I like knowing that I still have like a lot to read of, because it means that I don't have to leave the world anytime soon. Alright, so the third last series is another contemporary romance, and that is the Well Met series by Jen DeLuca. Book 1 was Well Met, and I absolutely adored it. I love how it's all centered around a Ren fair, and again, it's like a anthology kind of situation where you have book 1 is about one couple, book 2 is another, and book 3 is another. So it's well played, well met, well met, well played, and well matched. So I'm excited about those. And then we have a trilogy that I only have 1 book left in, and that is the Menagerie Trilogy by Rachel Vincent. I have a lot of issues with this series, I will admit, but I don't know, I only have 1 book left, so I want to finish it and see how it all ends. However, I do have some very personal issues with it, which I can get into when I do a full review of it, but yeah, I'm starting to lose my voice now, guys. The last series that I have here is one that I literally just finished book 1 of a few days ago, and that is Shadow March by Tad Williams. I've never read a Tad Williams book before, but Shadow March was so well done. The politics were super intriguing. I loved so many of the characters. A couple of characters that I'm kind of about, but I feel like it just means that their character arcs are going to be so great, so I'm excited to see how that goes. There's 4 books in this series, and it's another epic fantasy. I absolutely love a good epic fantasy with fighting and politics, and it's just so great, and I really enjoyed it. It's like top of my mind right now with how fun it was to read. I thought that it was going to take me a couple weeks because it is like 700 to 800 pages, but I ended up finishing it in about 4 days. It was so good, you guys. I definitely need to finish this series, but again, it's one like Outlander that are big beefy books, and like The Faithful and the Fallen that are bigger books that I need to really space out in between a lot of smaller books, so that means it's going to take me longer to get to them. Okay, that was a lot of talking. Those are all of the books that I have listed right now for series that I need to catch up on. I am very interested to see if you guys have any of these series that you feel like you need to finish and which ones I should probably work on first, or which ones you're excited to hear me talk about first. So be sure to like this video in honor of me slowly losing my voice and talking about so many books. So please be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel for more videos, and make sure that you click that bell notification icon so you are aware anytime I make new ones. And until next time, keep reading.